Hi, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast dedicated to discussing unique challenges of women in the tech industry and how to overcome them. I'm your host, Limor Gross, and on today's episode, I have a pleasure speaking with Denzil Eden, the founder and CEO of Smarty AI. Denzil is on a mission to develop AI assistants that amplify human capabilities rather than replacing us. You'll hear her incredible story, from coding at just 8 years old to becoming an entrepreneur after she worked at Microsoft. And she shares her valuable insights for inspiring founders, especially women looking to make their mark in the male-dominated tech world. So get ready for an inspiring conversation with Denzil and join us to this episode. And let's dive in. Hi, Denzil. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have you.
Same. How's your day going?
So far, no complaints. It's been rather hot today, but no complaints at all.
Awesome. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and we had a really lovely day yesterday, but today is kind of on the colder side.
Oh, I actually prefer the cold than, the hot weather that we have here in the summer. It's like unbearable.
Yeah, with the cold, you can always put on more layers, but with the hot, you're stuck.
Yeah. So we talked a while back, but I remember you mentioned that you started coding at the age of 8. And I wanted to ask you that's not typical for girls, unfortunately, right? Unfortunately, it's not typical. And what kind of initially drew you to technology and into coding at such a young age?
Yeah, I was very lucky that my school, I went to this school called Challenger out in the Bay Area, and they just taught coding as a class at the school. It was very unique to the school. I don't think any other school in the area did that. And they taught this language called Logo to third graders, which was how old I was when I was 8, and where I was when I was 8 years old. And Logo was this language designed for kids. It had a turtle, and you would tell the turtle what to do, where to go. You could get the turtle to build a house or a snowflake. And that's actually the first introduction I had to coding. And one, it was so much fun for me, but two, it just made sense. It was so logical. It made sense. Like, okay, if you say this, the turtle will do that. And that's kind of how I fell in love with it. I loved how logical and sensible coding was. And so I remember coming home from my first computer science class being like, I want to be a coder. This is what I want to do. And I kind of took that passion with me all through middle and high school and eventually to college.
Wow, this sounds incredible. I would love if there's any information about this program or about this tool, if you can share with me after. Because, we need it so much to encourage young children and especially young girls to
Definitely
go into tech. The younger, the better.
The younger, the better. I honestly think there's no age limit to start learning how to think logically or to learn how to think like a computer thinks. I think you can start very, very young with that. And I've actually seen a lot of like baby books starting to come out around this is if this, then that. So I definitely think the younger, the better. I was very lucky at that time that my school just had this class that they forced everyone to take. Everyone was required to take this class. So I was very lucky to have that exposure early on. And I actually think Logo is what I started with, but actually there's so many better coding languages for kids today. Like I really recommend MIT has this whole Scratch program for kids. There's so many great ways to learn coding today. But actually, more than coding, I think it's really important for kids to learn AI literacy today, because that's the next frontier is like, how do you deal with AI tools and AI technology? And so I think kids can start interacting with AI tools as young as third grade.
Yeah. Yeah, the world is changing so rapidly. Can't believe it. Yeah. And now I want to talk about your experiences. I mean, you worked at and Microsoft, and how kind of your experiences influenced your decision to start Smarty?
Yeah, it's a great question because really, right out of college and my master's, I actually, in my master's, worked on a precursor to Slack. I built this platform that allowed students and teachers to collaborate asynchronously. And I probably could have turned that into a company back then. But when I was coming out of college at 22 years old, I thought being a founder was not for me. I was so convinced that I was not the mold of what a founder should be. And I told myself, oh, I should go to big tech. And I'm very happy I did because I had a great experience at Microsoft. I worked first as a PM at PowerPoint, and then I switched to being a software engineer at Yammer. And so I got a breadth of learnings and skill sets while I was there. But at the time, I was very convinced that I could not be a founder. And I don't know where that mentality came from. But I eventually decided to go to business school, and business school really opened that door for me and opened my eyes to the idea that I could start something that I was passionate about and pursue it and try to make it into a business. And Microsoft provided me the right skill set and the right expertise to go pursue that after business school.
Wow, this is an incredible story. And I want just to pause here for a moment because you mentioned something critical. Like you didn't think you are kind of cut off the material of being an entrepreneur. And I think this is important message to all women out there because we don't have enough women founders.
I agree.
So other than go to business schools, what other tips do you have for women who really, maybe want to make a difference in this world? They have some thoughts or idea, but they doubt that they are cut up for this.
So I want to start off by saying that if you have doubts, you have to squash them. Doubt is always going to be there, and no one is, especially with entrepreneurship where there is no roadmap, no known strategy. No one can tell you whether you can do it or not. You have to believe in yourself that you can do it, and you have to just go after your dreams, go after your ideas. And most of the time, your first idea is not going to work out. Entrepreneurship is the process of iterating through your idea, continuing to experiment and ideate, and really anyone can do it. Anyone can be a founder, and I actually think everyone should try to be a founder if they're interested, because the amount of learning you get as a founder day to day is unparalleled to anything else. You have never learned as much as you do day to day as a founder. And so I really think if you want to be a founder, go out there and do it. There's no one who's the right person or the right way. No one knows. So you should just try to figure it out yourself. And I think it's really sad that there aren't more female founders out there right now. And I think part of the problem is the less than 3% of venture capital globally goes to women. Less than 3%, which is so crazy in 2024. And I think it's partially because not enough women are putting themselves out there. And it's partially because there's such a subjective lens when it comes to deploying capital to young founders. And I really think as a founder, I've really realized that you shouldn't worry about venture capital. You shouldn't worry about what other people say. At the end of the day, as a founder, you need to build a successful business that makes money. And anyone can go do that. You have to find the right customer. You have to find the right pain point. And you need to start solving it in a way that you're making money. And anyone can do that. And you don't need venture capital to go out and do that.
That sounds simple.
It's not simple. It's definitely not simple. It's hard work, but anyone can do it if they're determined enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Create value and solve problems. Solve problems no one else is solving.
Exactly. And sometimes you have to start with a problem someone is solving, or you have to start with something that isn't creating value immediately, but you have to be willing to iterate. Just keep going until you're creating value.
And what was the motivation for you to found Smarty?
I actually started building Smarty for myself. I was in business school and was just feeling overwhelmed with everything that was going on in my life, both professionally and personally. And I kept thinking to myself, technology can do this already. Technology could automate all of these workflows that I'm doing. And it's why is there not a solution out there that I can just talk to and have it automate the work I'm doing? And so that's why I started building Smarty. I started building Smarty as a chatbot that I could talk to, and I would try to get it to do things that were on my plate. But eventually I started pitching it to investors, and I was like, I want to make this into a real company, into a real business. And that's how I got started.
Incredible. You just solved your own problem and now you're solving the problem for everyone
Hopefully
else.
for everyone else out there.
Incredible. And you talked about raising money and about investors, and I want to talk about that because money and raising funds is definitely even more challenging for women than even starting a company. So tell us, what's the secret? Like, what helped you successfully raise 2.5 million at the first time founder?
It was a long journey. It's honestly for everyone out there who is a founder, you have to just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you're going to hear so many no's and so much rejection and so much criticism. And you have to build a very tough skin, and you have to take constructive criticism wherever you can. And you cannot take anything personally. Like if someone, like an investor, says no today, it doesn't mean that it's a no forever. You just need to keep in touch with them, keep showing progress, keep showing results, and not be offended if someone says no. Like there could be so many reasons for why you're not getting capital today, whereas it might be possible to get capital tomorrow. My first investor, I actually pitched her 2 years before she wrote our check. And she gave me some great feedback. I took the feedback. I kept in touch. I kept showing her progress and updates. And I think that's really the reason why she took a risk on me and gave me our first check of capital. So I think it's important as a founder to build a tough skin, to have grit, and to just keep working towards your goals.
Yes, I think that you cannot be an entrepreneur without it, right? I mean, you need to be able to face a lot of failures, a lot of rejections, and keep moving on.
Exactly. I will say though, now that I am a first time founder that has raised capital, if I could have waited to raise capital, I would have. Like if I was to start a startup today, I would really focus on becoming profitable and finding a recurring source of revenue. And that would be the number one goal. It's more important to create value and create revenue than it is to raise capital. And then once you've created revenue and you've created a flywheel with a customer that is repeatable, it's easy to raise venture capital because then you've already proven out a business model that works. And so for all of the folks that are listening today, it is so much easier today to start a company than it was 10, 15 years ago. You just need a website, you just need to talk to customers. And I think there are a lot of ways to get started today without raising capital.
Tell us a little more about this because, eventually you need to rent a place, right? You need to buy food and all that. So how do you do it? Because people usually when they go to their entrepreneurial journey, they have to let go of a paycheck and they still need to pay the bills. So how do you do that?
I think if you are working a job today and you have an idea, there's so much you can do to validate that idea before you quit your job. And I think if I was going to start a startup today and I had an idea, the first thing I would do is create a landing page for my idea. And then think of like, how would I market this idea to a customer? And I would put that onto a landing page on a website. I would create a waitlist button on the website. And then I would drive ads. I would advertise, I would promote my website, and I would see who's signing up, who is interested in this product that doesn't yet exist. Once you have that wait list of users that say, oh, I'm interested in this idea, you start interviewing them. But you don't pitch your idea. You ask them, what's going on in your life? Why did you sign up for this wait list? What are some of the pain points in your life? And you try to find patterns on this wait list of users. Then you find a single customer that matches a pattern, and you find a single pain point that matches a pattern from your waitlist, and then you build a prototype for that specific pain point. And you can build a prototype for free on Figma with just a few mock-ups. You can build a paper prototype if you want, and go back to that waitlist of users, show them the paper prototype and say, does this solve your problem? And if you build up enough confidence and enough votes, you can even start getting these waitlist users to pay you. You can say, if you pay me $10, I will start doing this service for you, or I will start building this product to solve this problem specifically for you. And that's before you've raised any capital. That's before you've written any code. And you can take all of that to an investor. You can say, look, I've built up a 1,000-person waitlist. All 1,000 people have the same problem and have agreed that this solution will solve their problem for them, and they're willing to pay me for it. I think if I had this much money, I could build this out and start generating revenue. And a lot of VCs will be so interested in just having that proof and that data.
This is brilliant, right? I mean, because usually, founders, they just go and write code, right? The first thing that
I
they
did
do
that.
is go and write the code.
Exactly. And that's a trap. I definitely fell into that trap. Being a coder, being an engineer, I built my product before I was convinced of who is the customer other than me, and how are they going to pay for it, and why are they paying for it. And those are really important questions to answer. And you do not need to code in order to answer those questions.
That's for sure. You just need to sell something that doesn't exist yet, interview your potential customers, and get a
Exactly.
better understanding of the market. And then you build after you done your research.
Exactly. And as a first time founder, I would say that's my biggest mistake. And for anyone who's listening, don't make that mistake and do it. It's not, I don't think there is a right way in entrepreneurship, but there are definitely better ways of doing things.
Yeah, and I think it also very much depends on the type of entrepreneurial journey that you go to. Some things are more complicated and more kind of takes more time to build than others, depending how big is your idea.
Definitely.
But definitely, if it's like a tool or something relatively contained,
Software related. Yes.
yeah,
There's so many ways to mitigate risk.
absolutely. And I loved what you said about, you don't have to leave your job yet. You can just start it on while you still have a paycheck.
And then you can gain some confidence really around like, okay, if I go to pursue this idea, I know there are customers waiting for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to ask you a question because you mentioned earlier, like, you moved from product to engineering. And that's an interesting move because typically I hear the opposite. So I hear
Yeah.
people moving from engineering to product, which kind of makes sense, right? And you come with all the technical experience and it's a benefit. How does the other way around works?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I was in college and I got pushed towards product. And I liked being in product while I was there. I was at product at PowerPoint. You're closer to the users, you're closer to the data and the research, which is really fun. And you're making much more strategic moves. But I think I was pushed into it a little bit too early, and I missed being technical. And I also felt like the choice of being technical was taken away from me because I got almost pigeonholed into a product role really early on in my career. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to fight against this. I want to go back to being more technical. I want to pick up an engineering role instead and work on those skills. And so that's why I kind of went in the reverse direction. I think you're right, though. Most people go from engineering to products. It was a very unconventional transition, but it was what I needed at the time. Really just because I wanted to broaden my skill set and really understand all levels of the tech stack.
That's wonderful and very brave, I would say, because it's really difficult to move from product to engineering because you have to prove yourself. You have to prove that you have what
So
it
technical.
takes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was a hard transition, but it was worth it. I'm really glad that I did it.
So if there is a product person out there that wants to dip their hands into code, but they are afraid, what would you advise them to do?
Honestly, the biggest part of transitioning is first making sure you're still interested in coding on a product, then to practice the technical interviews, because technically interviewing for a job is so different than actually doing the job. And so it's really important to prepare yourself for the technical interviews. And then the third thing is, of course, to like continue to keep your coding skills top notch. And the best way to do that is to work on hobby projects for yourself. Open source projects on GitHub or building something for yourself for fun. That's the best way to keep your coding skills sharp.
Definitely. And be willing to get rejections. I would say, right? Going back to the resiliency.
But I think that's just a part of life. And that's actually why I think it's really important, or if you want to be a founder, to actually go and be a founder, because the lessons that you learn through the entrepreneurial journey are just life lessons. They're just good things to know for life. That rejection is just part of life and you should be able to deal with it and move through it, that you need to be willing to put yourself out there and not care about what other people think and only care about your purpose and your compass. Like the entrepreneurial journey has so many great principles on how you should live your life.
Definitely, and I agree with you. I mean, I'm not considering myself as entrepreneur, as I haven't built like a software product or anything like that, but I do build programs. And I think that you have to have a strong, first of all, you have to have a very strong why. Why
Yes.
you're doing what you're doing. And I would love to hear your why. Why are you
Yes.
doing what you're doing?
I actually started working on Smarty because I feel very strongly that the future of AI is this sidekick or optimization of human skills. And I really wanted to build that myself and be part of that journey. And so if I wasn't working on Smarty, I would probably go work at a company that is doing exactly the same thing, because I do think this is the future. I think AI tools and AI extensions of us are just around the corner, and I want to be part of building that. And so that has always been the driving force for me. And I think it's true. Like, you need to have that why as motivation, because sometimes on the worst days, that's all you have. Is all you have is your why. And so I think it's really important. And I don't think an entrepreneur is necessarily just someone who has an idea and is building it from scratch. There are entrepreneurs at larger companies. It's anyone who has a passion that they want to build, whether they're doing it on their own or within a larger company. It just means following an idea through completion.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. A lot of people with entrepreneurial spirit are, innovating within their paid job in a company.
Exactly. And I think
Definitely.
companies really value that. Like, that innovative spirit, I think, is really important to keep companies thriving as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So going back to what I was saying, like a strong why is definitely important. And then you have to develop your resiliency and perseverance, right? I mean, you said like 2 years until you got that investor to say yes. And that kind of means that no is only the beginning of.
Exactly. The no is only the beginning, and the why is what keeps you going. You have to believe in your idea, your dream, your vision. And from there, you just need to be collecting data on, like, is this actually going to work? Is this actually going to help people? Is this going to create value? You need to just keep experimenting and then collecting data and confidence.
Definitely. And I wanted to ask you also about AI. You mentioned AI. To be honest, I cannot imagine how my life would look without AI. I
Yeah.
just got used to it so much that I cannot even imagine how would I function without it. I use it every day. But I know a lot of people are very intimidated by AI, that it will steal our jobs, will not be needed anymore. What's your take on that?
Yes. Okay. So, two parts. The first around, like, AI taking our jobs, and the fear that's there around AI. So I think I hear three main concerns when it comes to AI. The one, it's going to steal our jobs. The second one is around security and privacy of the data that it uses. And the third is around data attribution. So I'm going to go into all three, if that's okay. So the first one around
Yes.
AI taking our jobs, I really think of AI as a tool. And I think of it very similar to the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, there were a certain type of job that was very prevalent. And then the Industrial Revolution happened and all of these factory jobs opened up. But in the long term, the Industrial Revolution led to more jobs, more opportunities. And it's the same with AI. There might be a short-term cost as AI comes out, but in the long term, over the next 5-10 years, it is going to be opening up millions and millions of jobs globally. They're new jobs, and we'll have to train ourselves to be able to handle those jobs. But in the long run, it's going to be creating more opportunity for everyone, and it's going to democratize how we work, how we live. And overall, I think it's going to increase the quality of life of everyone in the long term. So I think AI is a net positive, personally. The second one around security and privacy, because AI uses data to do everything that it does, it's really important that we are secure about how we're using data. We anonymize user data whenever possible, and we encrypt it and make sure it stays private and secure. And so I think that is, of course, a concern. But the great thing about security and privacy concerns is that companies know that it's important, and they know how to do it. They know how to keep data secure and private. And there's some great folks, great minds, actually only focused on that problem at every top company. And so I believe that it's important, but I know that companies believe it's important and they're doing everything that they can to make sure our data stays secure and private. So I feel good about that. The last one is around data attribution. So again, everything that AI does, it's only possible because of the data that it was fed and given. But the problem with that is the people who are supplying this data often have biases. And so the data that they're providing is not necessarily representative of the whole population. And so the data that AI is being provided can be biased by race, it can be biased by gender, it can be biased by socioeconomic class, or by even like culture or ethnicity. And so there's so many biases we're introducing in our data. And people are aware of this problem, but we don't really have the frameworks or the solutions necessary, at least right now, to protect ourselves from data bias. And so I think there's going to be a whole industry that pops up just focused on creating audits of data and creating objective data sources and samples and creating representational data for like the population the data is supposed to represent. And so I think this is going to be a huge industry that's going to grow in the next 5-10 years, just about data quality. And then the second part of data attribution is that a lot of these companies like Midjourney, which is an art AI tool, often steals art. It takes art from young artists who don't have good copyright rules or they don't have good representation, and Midjourney stealing this artwork and calling it its own. And so I think there's going to be another industry that pops up around attributing data to the right artists, to the right sources, and making sure credit goes where credit is due. And so I think that's another big thing that is a concern, that's a valid concern that still has to be addressed today.
Absolutely. And I liked your analogy to the industrial revolution. I used that as well. But I also thought about something else. Think about it when the internet started, obviously, there were breaches. And
Definitely.
that's why we had SSL and we had other, encryption and all that. So the same way, like security evolved for the internet, it will evolve for AI.
Definitely. I think, with any new technology, there's always a short-term growing pains, but long-term, I think AI is a net good.
I'm with you on that. It saves me so much time and also brings me so many ideas. I mean, I just in love with it.
Me too. And actually, for everyone who's scared to try AI, who's like afraid to experiment with these tools, I think AI literacy is the number one thing everyone should be working on, from little kids to adults. You should be playing around with AI tools. And if you're scared of like getting started, I think the best way to start is with your hobby or your passion. So if you are passionate about cooking, there's so many AI cooking tools out there. If you're passionate about playing music or composing music, there's so many AI composition tools out there. If you're passionate about writing, ChatGPT exists. If you're passionate about art, Midjourney exists. And so taking your hobby and then playing around with the relevant AI tool there is such a great way to get started, because it pushes you to be better at something you're already passionate about, but it also teaches you this is how AI thinks, this is how you use tools like this. So it's my favorite way to get started.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, there is probably an AI tool to every kind of use case because they pop up every day now.
Yeah. Generative AI is going to change how we create content, how we consume content. And so if you have a passion, go find the AI tool for that passion.
Yes. The problem I have is that I want to subscribe and pay for pretty much every tool that I see. And it's like, okay, I have to really pick the ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you. What kind of your favorite tools? Let's say for someone like me who is into podcasting, writing, creating content, what are your go-to tools?
Yeah, so I use Munch for. A lot of my AI tools are related to things that I do for work, and so I use Munch for like taking video clips, or Opus is another one. I use Otter for recording meetings and giving me actionable summary items. I use Smarty for planning my day and managing my time. I use ChatGPT, both personally and professionally. I enjoy writing for fun. So whenever I hit a creative block, I can ask ChatGPT like for inspiration. I use Midjourney for a lot of the blog posts that I write. So really, every aspect of my work day and my personal day, I have an AI tool for that.
Definitely, definitely. By the way, I kind of I use also OpenAI. I subscribe to them. Mid Journey, I cannot figure this Discord thing. To be honest, I'm that's like the
Own thing. I agree. It's its own interface for sure.
But I also love Claude AI. I mean, I really, really like the results that Claude gives me. So if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend to try it out.
I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah. And what else, before we end our incredible conversation, what else do you want to share that I haven't asked?
Well, for everyone who's listening, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love chatting with folks from everything from AI to tech to Smarty if you need a personalized onboarding. And then for everyone listening, I'm working on Smarty. It's an AI-powered executive assistant. So please check it out, download it, and let me know what you think.
Absolutely. And I'll post both your LinkedIn and Smarty URLs so people can try it out.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Denzil. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Same. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. What's coming up next? Next week, you'll hear from Oge Oparanadi. She's an incredible engineering leader, and you'll hear how she accidentally got into tech after she got mixed up on her first day of university and got to the wrong course. She shares her powerful story of self-discovery, from feeling naive early in her career to recognizing the systematic barriers women, especially women of color, face in the tech industry. You also hear her candid insights on finding your purpose, being proactive instead of reactive, and her advice to other underrepresented women navigating challenges in tech. So tune in to Oge's inspiring story and actionable wisdom on believing in yourself, finding your tribe, and embodying the change you want to see. This is an episode you don't want to miss. See you next week.